Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Story from my last job at a pizza/gas station disaster. I was working in my kitchen by myself on this Christmas night and people were very unhappy about the wait times. I'd just gotten off the phone with someone who cussed me out for 5 minutes about not being able to cook him a pizza. I was already fuming. We had 40 minutes until close, and I had 2 orders and cleaning to do. A drunken toddler of a man stumbles in and then proceeds to curse at me repeatedly. He orders me to make him a medium jalapeno pizza with 4 times the normal amount of spicy and stumbles to the restroom, telling me to be done with it in 10 minutes or he will be punching my lights out. I couldn't refuse walk-ins, PS policy, so I decided to make his pizza, but I did it my way. I used a total of 103 jalapenos, yes, I counted, on that poor pizza. I also drizzled some jalapeno juice, some hot sauce, and used a bit of a buffalo sauce. Put it through the oven, double-checked to make sure everything was cooked through, and boxed it up. He stumbles out, and I ask him if he would like to look at the pizza before he pays, to which he states he would rather eat it than look at it. He takes it to the front, pays, and walks outside. 3 minutes later he's back, except he's sweating profusely and scrambling back towards our milk. He pays for a gallon and chugs about a quarter of it, and then he runs outside in a dash. Ah yes, another satisfied customer. This story comes from when I worked in an impound call center. I handled escalation calls when someone called in regarding their service plan with complaints that cannot be handled with a regular agent's authority, or the caller demanded to speak with a supervisor or manager. The call got transferred into my team's call queue and one of us handled it. Little background. I was born and raised in the Southwest. When I was a wee little child, I spoke with a very heavy stutter. It took several years and lots of patience on my mother's part to teach me how to speak normally. The outcome was that I had to enunciate all of my words carefully and thus spoke without any hint of a local accent. Later, during my middle school days, I got teased a lot for not having a proper accent. So, I decided to teach myself how to speak with a proper accent. I watched a lot of my dad's old black and white westerns to learn the lingo. Then I started talking like Scotty from the original Star Trek series. It was fun, so I started copying other accents from TV and movies. I had over a dozen, including German Sergeant Schultz, I know nothing. Pirate and badly dubbed Chinese Kung Fu, lots of pauses, simple phrases, and every sentence ends in ha. Bad side effects came about though. Often, when I'm around a person with a heavy accent, I subconsciously begin to mimic their accent. I don't realize I'm doing it until it's pointed out. Usually the other person thinks I'm making fun of them or something. To avoid getting punched in the face, I have to do some quick explaining without the borrowed accent. So the call. A call comes into my queue and I answer it as normal. Kinda. I have been joking around with my supervisor while using an Indian accent, so when I answered the call I was still using the accent. The woman caller was immediately furious. She started screaming at the top of her lungs that she had specifically demanded to speak with someone who spoke English. Nada! Well, let's just say her choice of words lay heavy on the racist side. And let's leave it at that. Realizing my error, I dropped the accent and tried to talk with the lady normally, but she would have none of it. She continued on a horrible racist diatribe about foreign call center workers, how there weren't any proper American English speakers anymore, and cussing me up one side down the other. Now I've handled a lot of angry calls by small-minded people, but there is one hot button I will not tolerate. The caller started insulting my parents. You wish to talk with someone who speaks English, correct? I broke in, dropping back into the Indian accent at the same time. Yes, not a problem. I said, I will transfer you to someone who speaks English, but I must warn you, do not disconnect from the call for any reason whatsoever. We are experiencing a rather large call volume at this time. You are currently at the top of the queue. But if you disconnect and call back, you will be all the way back at the bottom of the call line. And you do not want that, correct? God, no! Very well. Please stay on the line, and the next available English speaker will be with you shortly. Have a most pleasant day. Then I put her on hold. It should be noted that we are not supposed to put callers on hold, but I did so that she would 1. Think she was being transferred, and 2. Make her listen to the horrible hold music. Placing a caller on hold immediately sent up a red flag in the call monitoring software. Normally a supervisor would come storming over and demand answers. My supervisor, however, had his cubicle right next to mine and had been leaning over the top when I had initially fumbled the call. He had also patched his phone into my line and heard everything the caller had said. "What are you doing?" he asked me, while smiling a wicked smile. Exactly what she demanded. She wants to talk with someone who speaks English. Then that's exactly what she's going to get, I replied with my own big grin. After about 5 minutes, I took the call off hold and answered with my best Russian accent in place. Then on hold again. 5 minutes later, German accent. Then French, then Swedish, then Mario Brothers Italian, so on and so forth. For over an hour, I kept transferring this racist witch, each time answering the phone with both good, bad and horrible accents, speaking English. I thought for sure she would have caught on around the 30-minute mark when I spoke pirate. She didn't, so I continued. After about 1 hour and 20 minutes of sending this woman on a verbal tour of the world, the woman was sobbing so hard I could barely make out her distressed words. So I went in for the kill. I answered the phone with a thick southern drawl. She was so happy. She spent a good 10 minutes telling me what a horrible experience she has had just to finally talk with someone who spoke proper English. I asked her what I could do for her and she told me what her issue was. It was something so simple that one of the regular agents could have handled it in less than 2 minutes. Finishing up the call, the woman once more thanked me for speaking proper English. I dropped back into the Indian accent. "Not a problem at all, madam. It was a pleasure to handle your call. You know, it's funny. You sound just like a woman I spoke to an hour ago. Isn't life strange?" With a satisfied smile, I hung up during the scream of choking rage. I've been reading stories on here for a while, but this is the first time posting on here. I think what happened to me is pretty funny and interesting, but I never know what other people would think. Came across my Karen a couple of weeks ago. So to give you a quick bit of backstory, while I own a car, I prefer my motorcycle. It uses less gas and frankly just more fun to ride in my opinion. I'm also a 30-something guy who frankly looks like a stereotypical hipster. Although, amusingly, the same parts of me that make me look like a hipster, long hair, long beard, glasses, make me look like a motorcycle hoodlum. I guess if I'm in gear. Although I'm fairly doe-eyed, so if not wearing a helmet/shades, most people say I don't look intimidating at all. Anyway, I'm heading to the store just to pick up a couple of things, and while it isn't really busy in the parking lot, the front half of the lot is pretty packed. I actually don't like to park my bike too far away from the front, cause people can sometimes be jerks and mess with your stuff if they think they are not gonna be seen. I actually caught some stranger sitting on my bike before and it freaked me out. I was about to roll in to park in 12 to 13 spaces back when I noticed a silver Audi double parked near the front. Maybe 2-3 spaces back, it wasn't perfectly centered. The passenger side was actually just a foot past the line. Just enough where someone couldn't park next to her, but maybe people would just think it was a crappy parking job instead of it being a crappy person. While this space wasn't enough for a car, it was perfect for a bike, so I pulled in next to the Audi, actually pleased I found a space so close to the store. I had barely turned off the engine and taken off my helmet when you-know-who appears. A woman in her late 20s or early 30s with a sour look and a "can I speak to your supervisor" haircut. I know everyone says this, and I usually roll my eyes when people says this in their posts. But meeting someone like that in person now, it really does perfectly describe her. "What do you think you're doing? You can't park there," Karen says quite loud and very angry. I turn to look at her, still wearing my sunglasses with my helmet in my hands. "Excuse me? You can't park your bike in those spaces. You're blocking my car and they aren't meant for you." Now, I was taken aback by this woman yelling at me. My bike was completely within the space, and while I was sort of blocking the passenger side, I've seen people get into their car with other cars parked much closer. Plus, it wasn't like this person was aware. "Well, I'm going to shop here, so I'm allowed to park here." "No, you're not," she shrilled, "and you're blocking my car." "Lady, you're the one who parked over the line, and I'm not even parked that close to you. If you're leaving, just leave and shut up." "You don't talk to me like that, you jerk," she actually screamed, getting a wild look in her eyes. "I can't get into my car because of you and your crappy bike. Get out of here before I call the cops." I rolled my eyes, although she couldn't see me behind the glasses. Maybe if she had asked nicely if I could move out so she could get into her car, I would've, even if there was clearly enough space for her. But frankly, I was in no mood to accommodate this crazy lady. "Screw you," I told her. I guess that was the wrong thing to say, as I swear I could actually see steam coming out of her ears. Karen actually stomps over. I thought to get into her car, but oh, was I wrong. She grabs onto my bike and tries to knock it over. Now the bike was secure and it's not actually as easy to knock it over as it seems, but she was literally trying to throw my bike to the ground. I curse at her, "What the F do you think you're doing?" and grab her by the wrists and promptly shove her off my bike. Then she screeched. Think that scene in X-Men 2 when the mercs break into the mansion and that one mutant girl has a screaming superpower. And actually she screamed for help that I had assaulted her. Now there were people around, not many but a few. But when Karen screamed for help, someone actually did call the police and started asking Karen if she was okay. And suddenly she was all grinning at me. I remember the guy who called the cops actually looked super uncomfortable and said he had to go. It took 10 minutes for a cop to show up, and I remember the woman was standing behind my bike now, in a parking space to keep me from leaving. Her face red but smiling at me, telling me that I was in for it now. How I would go to prison for attacking her, and how she hoped I got assaulted every day because that's what people like me deserve. Yes, she actually said that. I was a little worried, but I hadn't actually done anything other than remove her hands from my property, so I tried to remain calm, and then the cop arrived. A man probably in his late 30s, and the expression on his face actually made me concerned. Have you ever heard the phrase, "It looks like someone took a crap in your oatmeal"? Well, this guy looked like someone just did this in his cream of wheat right before having to come and deal with us. Before the cop could even introduce himself, Karen ran up and started speaking a mile a minute. She seriously had diarrhea of the mouth as crap spouted from that hole she called a mouse. She told the cop how I was some biker in a gang, that I was parked illegally, and when she politely told me to move, I threatened to beat her and then punched her in the face. Mind you, my bike was perfectly legally parked and she didn't have a single mark on her face from where I supposedly punched her. The cop looks unconvinced by her story and turns to me, asking for my side. I tell him what really happened. I parked, she demanded I move, and then tried to push over my bike. The entire time Karen screaming that I was a liar and trying to interject her own nonsense timeline into my story. Finally, the cop looked at Karen and said, "Ma'am, if you really want to claim he hit you, I'm sure the store has cameras. I will be happy to check. But as for parking, your car is the one who is illegally parked." Karen's eyes got that crazed look again when she realized that the cop wasn't going to just immediately believe her story and cart me off to jail. "You jerk! He's not allowed to be parked here." Amazingly, she suddenly stopped talking about how I hit her. The cop didn't look pleased to be insulted. "In fact, I'm going to issue you a ticket. because you decided you could scream in my face and call me a moron," the cop said. And that's when Karen lost it. She, with all her force, smacked the cop partly in the shoulder and face. She actually missed, so it was doubtful she could have really hit him, but still, the effect was immediate. It was like in those nature documentaries when you see a snake just suddenly strike. The cop grabs her and within seconds, he has her face first over the back of her own Audi, and Karen is once again screeching as she gets handcuffed. This entire time I'm just standing there mouth agape and trying not to do anything to become the target of this officer's wrath. He tells her she's been arrested for assault of an officer and something about after she has calmed down if there was anyone who could come to pick up her Audi. Otherwise it will be towed at her expense. The entire time Karen is screaming that this is a travesty of justice, how the cop wasn't allowed to do this to her, and something that really made me sense, how more N-words should be shooting up these crooked cops. Eventually she's shoved into the back of the cop's cruiser as she continues to kick her feet and scream, and then eventually starts sobbing. It's a sight to behold. The cop asked me if I wanted to press charges, and I was honest and said, for what? Really? All she was doing was being a witch. And frankly, I think she had managed to get herself into enough trouble as it was since she got arrested. The cops said they might try her for disorderly conduct and resisting arrest, depending on if she calms down. He also said if she does have someone to pick up her car, he would make sure a police officer was nearby, just in case she had any friends who might try and take it out on my bike. Although I told him I was probably only going to be about 15 minutes in the store. Car was still there when I left, so no closure on what's happened to her precious Audi. And that's my story. I don't know what happened to Audi Annie, but I never did see her again. Although I still of course see the occasional silver Audi here and there. Sorry that I don't actually know what happened to her. If she's lucky she'll get a couple tickets, unless she decides to continue being crazy entitled again. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.